As a kid, I always viewed Poison-type Pokemon as weak, given how frequently Team Rocket members would utilize them and how common they seemed to be in the early game. The thing about being a kid is you don't know shit about fuck. Still, prior to the addition of the Fairy type, Poison-type Pokemon didn't offer up much value compared to other types. Let's find out if Poison types are as weak as I thought by trying a Hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon SoulSilver using exclusively Poison-type Pokemon. There's quite a few Poison types that do appear early in the game. An astute observation by my childhood self. The Ariados line is only available in Heart Gold, and Swalot and Muck are only available once we get to Kanto. Did I choose SoulSilver specifically to avoid having to catch a spider? Maybe. No more questions. I choose Chikorita in order to give our rival Cyndaquil, as I figure that's probably the most difficult of the three to deal with. After he breaks into Professor Elm's lab, the officer asks me what his name is, so I give him a fake name because I'm no snitch. On Route 30, I catch the first of many early team members, Bugspray the Weedle. At level 3, he legitimately can't safely train against even level 2 Pidgey. So I have to subject him to some bug-on-bug violence in order to level him up enough to safely progress on to the next route. Once he evolves into a Kakuna, I head into the Dark Cave and I catch Weedkiller the Zubat, who is sadly level 2 with a minus attack nature. On Route 31, I add Pesticide the Bellsprout, and that one is a very important encounter, because that means at night I can head into Sprout Tower and catch our 4th Poison type before even getting to the first gym, Ammonia the Ghastly. Not exactly the most inspiring bunch, at least as it pertains to facing the first gym leader Falkner and his flying types. Mercifully, Bugspray evolves into a Beedrill to give us a fighting chance. His Pidgey loves to go for sand attacks, so I have Ammonia put it to sleep in hopes of being able to set up Focus Energy with Bugspray. A weak tackle is all he can muster before going down. Falkner's illegitimate Pidgeotto is the real problem here. Bugspray does a decent amount of damage thanks to a crit with Fury Attack, and thanks to a surprisingly solid special defense stat, tanks a Gust reasonably well. A Roost sadly undoes the damage that we put in, but Bugspray connects on a 5-hit Fury Attack with 3 crits. We're actually in a speed tie here, and Pidgeotto gets to move first and get another Roost off, but loses the speed tie on the next turn and gets taken out. With our first badge in hand, we can use the HM for Rock Smash to farm shards, which we can trade to this strange fella for tons of useful berries. On Route 32, I catch Rat Poison the Ekans, whose Intimidate ability will really come in handy. This does mean I won't be able to catch a Quillfish, but that's okay, because Rat Poison is going to be with us for a very long time, and provide an immense amount of value throughout the run. Another reason why I'm not worried about Quillfish is because after getting the Old Rod from this fisherman in the Pokemon Center, I can head back to New Bark Town and catch Bleach the Tentacool. I arrive in Azalea Town to find Team Rocket beating up an old man. Initially my instinct was to pretend I didn't see anything and carry on to the gym, but Kurt drags me into the situation, then supposedly hurts his back while trying to be a hero and makes me do all the work. Once Team Rocket is out of the way, I head to the gym to challenge Bugsy. Scyther is a massive threat, but Rat Poison can mitigate that a little bit with an Intimidate. She's also able to learn the 4-time super effective Rock Tomb TM that I found in Union Cave, which activates Scyther's Citrus Berry. Unfortunately, she misses her next Rock Tomb as Scyther goes for a Focus Energy. That's no big deal though, she'll just get a KO on the next turn. Because Rat Poison is going to be with us for a very long time, and provide an immense amount of value throughout the run. The worst part about that death is it was avoidable if I just switched to Ammonia. A silly mistake, but Rat Poison paid the price for it. It should have been me. I let her down. Weedkiller isn't able to get the KO, and now he's also in range of a crit, so I learn from my mistakes and swap into Ammonia, who can easily take even a crit from U-turn. That death looks really bad in hindsight, but we live and we learn. His other 2 Pokemon are a joke, only knowing Poison Sting and Tackle. When Scyther finally comes back in, Ammonia is able to avenge our fallen angel with a Nightshade and earn us our 2nd badge. While I'd like to spend more time appropriately mourning the loss of our comrade, Butt shows up for one of the only somewhat challenging rival battles. I leveled up Bleach to the level cap because he learns Bubble Beam, but after this battle he's going to need to be put into Bubble Wrap in order to prevent him from overleveling. His Quilava spends seemingly forever spamming smoke screens and leers, which does let me split the EXP onto Ammonia and Weedkiller. Once he stops spamming status moves, Butt gets his cheeks clapped and we're able to continue on with our journey. With him out of the way, we can head to the Ilex Forest at night, which I definitely waited for and absolutely didn't adjust my time to accelerate the process. This lets me catch Roundup the Oddish, who's apparently somewhat of a clown. Considering the minus special attack nature, I'd say that's a fairly accurate description. After being preemptively rejected by Lyra before I even considered asking her out, I head into Goldenrod City where I can make myself feel better about being rejected by going shopping, and giving Weedkiller a nice haircut. Before I take on the next gym, I think the team is going to need a few upgrades. On Route 35, I catch Ajax the male Nidoran, and after using Cut to avoid this devious trainer with a Kadabra, I catch Asbestos the female Nidoran. Both of them happen to know the fighting type move Double Kick, perfect for the upcoming normal gym. They also evolve into Nidorino and Nidorina before the level cap, which is huge. If you've played these games before, you'll know that Whitney and her infamous Miltank need no introduction. I think I have a decent plan, but it's going to require Clefairy to cooperate a little bit and not hit some ridiculous move with Metronome. Bleach sets up a layer of Toxic Spikes, which Clefairy then mimics and proceeds to use on our entirely Poison-type team. Nice one, idiot. Unfortunately, she gets the turn 1 wake up as I switch to Asbestos, but she just sets up another layer of Toxic Spikes. I'm starting to understand how Whitney failed that quiz at the radio tower. I wanted to go with Ajax here and go for Focus Energy and Double Kick, but it wasn't a guaranteed KO without a crit, and Clefairy has Cute Charm, which would have had 2 opportunities to activate. Instead, I let Asbestos handle things. Miltank comes in and the Toxic Spikes pop her Lumberry, which is perfect. Normally, in order to status this thing, you have to waste 2 turns going for it. But between the 2 Poison Point ability team members and the Toxic Spikes already laid out, we don't have to waste time. Instead, Asbestos focuses on lowering her Rampaging Cow's attack stat while staying healthy with a held Citrus Berry. After a third Stomp connects, she finally gets poisoned, and now we can play the long game. A few team members have the move Protect that I purchased on my impulsive shopping spree earlier. As long as we can avoid critical hits, I can safely switch in between multiple teammates while the poison ticks away. Well, that's suboptimal. Ajax is the only one that can actually do decent damage, but now he's at risk to another crit. I try to send in Bug Spray, but he can't resist the allure of her Cow's Attract. The real problem is that she's going to heal because I wasn't able to attack, meaning now the stall tactic is going to get a lot more dangerous. I was hoping she'd try to attract Ajax so I can get a clean switch into Asbestos, but she just hits a Stomp again. Bug Spray gets hit by another Attract again and gets immobilized by Love 2 turns in a row. Control your libido there, bud. I need you to lock in.
Hey, f***o. We like to call it interspecies erotica. Intriguing.
I send in Roundup as he's the only one reasonably healthy enough to tank Stomps as Whitney goes for yet another heal. Roundup also can't resist her T-Bone Temptress. In fact, he's even less locked in than Bug Spray was. He proceeds to get immobilized twice in a row, then flinches on the 3rd turn before getting immobilized again 2 more turns in a row. For anyone wondering, the odds of this happening are about 1 in 53.3, or a 1.875% chance. Fortunately, Miltank doesn't crit to make it worse, and he's able to hang on as the apparent love of his life goes down to 1 final tick of poison. Would that have been a lot easier with, say, an Intimidate Pokemon that had a move that could lower Miltank's speed?
Again, no questions.
We finally catch a break from the universe as this old man gives us the HM for Surf to turn Bleach into a menace. With Surf, the rival battle in the Burn Tower isn't much of an issue. Once he's out of the way, we actually get another encounter, Chlorine the Coughing. Thanks in part to the handsome haircut Weedkiller received in Goldenrod, he's able to evolve into a Crobat quickly after evolving into Golbat. With the level cap at 25, Ammonia is also able to evolve into a Haunter. Perfect timing too, as we're about to face the Ghost-type gym. Weedkiller's minus attack nature isn't enough to stop him from knocking out Ghastly, but Haunter manages to survive on 1 HP. While that nature is unfortunate, I'm sure it won't cause any issues later on. Just a minor speed bump for now. On the bright side, it causes Morty to waste his potion on Haunter instead of his ace Gengar, who comes in next. Because of the Citrus Berry, Bite is going to end up being a 3-hit KO. Weedkiller gets a pretty clutch flinch, meaning when Gengar finally attacks and lands a Hypnosis, he's able to shake it off with a Chesto Berry and outspeed for the KO. For whatever reason, Morty decided to save his other Hyper Potion for Haunter instead of Gengar. I bet he'd also fail the Goldenrod Radio Tower quiz. Weedkiller takes down his final Pokemon and earns us our 4th badge. Now that I can use Surf outside of battle, I can head over to the Ruins of Alph and get a Moonstone so that I can evolve one of my Nidos. After being sent to Cianwood to get some medicine for the sick Ampharos and Olivine, I decide to take a quick pit stop at the gym to challenge Chuck and his fighting types. Fighting is one of the few types that poison Pokemon actually do well against, although it never really made sense to me why it wasn't super effective against it. I certainly wouldn't be able to fight if someone poisoned me. Let's hope Chuck is the same way. I lead with Bleach, who's now evolved into a Tentacruel to set up some Toxic Spikes. The risk here is that his Primeape could spam some double teams and become a menace to actually hit, but I have a plan for that. After 2 layers of Toxic Spikes, I send in Chlorine, who knows the move Haze, so when it goes for a 3rd double team in a row, they get mitigated completely. Chuck is persistent, probably because of the brain damage he suffered from having that waterfall crashing on his head for too long, so he continues to try to set up double teams. He finally switches to Rock Slide, so another Haze is able to wipe the slate clean again, also offsetting Chlorine's defense drop from the earlier Leer. Thanks to a Citrus Berry, Chlorine is healthy enough to stay in after poisoning Primeape with a Sludge. Chuck burns his Hyper Potion here instead of on his Poliwrath, which is also good news. His angry ape then whiffs a Rock Slide, but a flinch on the next turn forces a switch into Bleach. Chuck then decides to let his Primeape die from poison while doing what he loved most, spamming double teams. Poliwrath comes in and gets badly poisoned, and I'm anticipating anything but a Surf here. Ammonia is immune to both of his other moves and is holding a berry in case he goes for Hypnosis, which he does, but he misses anyways. Having a Ghost type for pivoting is so useful. What isn't useful is swapping into Roundup, not considering that he might go for Hypnosis again instead of Surf, so he gets put to sleep. I have to pivot around a bit, but Chuck's AI is always tricky, at least it always has been for me, so when expecting a Surf, Bleach gets tagged with a Body Slam. Seeing the damage it did, I know Bleach can't be taken out by a crit. Ask me how I know. The poison damage is starting to stack up and it forces out his other Hyper Potion. This time the pivot into Ammonia works as he body slams right through our Ghost. One last switch lets the poison do its job and earns us our 5th badge. Technically Jasmine is the next gym leader, but for some reason her level cap is 35 and Pryce's is 34, so I head over to Mahogany Town instead and over to the Lake of Rage, where I can get an incredibly useful item, the Choice Specs. After taking care of that abomination of a red Gyarados in the lake, I meet Lance and agree to join him on his investigation. Clearly that was a mistake, because now I'm an accessory to murder. That cop that tried to falsely accuse me of breaking into Elm's lab earlier now has an actual reason to lock me up. Before taking on the endless barrage of wildly underleveled rocket grunts, I go back to Route 43 now that it's nighttime and I catch Mothball the Venonat so he can train up against them, eventually evolving him into a Venomoth. Once Team Rocket is cleared out, I get the team ready to take on Pryce. His ground-type Piloswine seems like it would be the biggest problem, but it's actually his bulky Dugong. I could have gone to the game corner and played Voltorb Flip for some TMs like Thunderbolt, but I think we can handle him without doing all of that for now. Because his Seal can't do anything to Bleach, we're free to set up 2 layers of Toxic Spikes. Even though Icy Wind is super effective, Roundup hardly takes any damage from it on the switch. Seal then puts itself to sleep after barely taking any damage from its own hail. Great job, Pryce. This lets Roundup heal back to full with Mega Drains while taking out the Seal. Piloswine comes in and goes for Blizzard, but thanks to the Yachi Berry that my mom purchased for me with my own money, Weed Killer tanks it reasonably well. I wasn't 100% sure he was going for Blizzard there, but now I definitely am, so it allows for a very clean pivot into Bleach, who can take out Piloswine with a Surf. Dugong comes in, and unfortunately it knows Rest, so eventually it heals off the poison. Its only damaging moves are Ice-type moves though, so Bleach does a pretty good job walling it off for a while. And Acid almost takes it out, but then he goes for another Rest. Every Pryce battle takes forever because of this thing. Eventually I have to send in Bug Spray, who could take it out with a few Rock Smashes thanks to some defense drops. Now that I'm about to take on Jasmine, I decide it's finally time to evolve Ajax into a Nidoking. Thanks to the Dig TM, he's able to tear through her Magnemites. When Steelix comes in, I send in Bleach to hit a Choice Specs boosted Surf for the easiest gym battle of the run. Once Jasmine is defeated, I get a call from Professor Elm about something going on in Goldenrod, and that something turns out to be another onslaught of mostly low-level Team Rocket opponents. On the bright side, I do get to briefly cosplay as a Team Rocket member. Something about that while having a team full of poison Pokemon just feels right. Now for the boss battles. Petrel's unhinged team of Exploding, Coughing, and Wheezing are dispatched by Choice Specs boosted Psybeams from Mothball. Bud is waiting to ambush us with a severely underleveled team that gets dismantled with ease. Ariana's team is also underleveled. Really disappointing level curve in these games. Archer is the first opponent whose Pokemon are actually at an appropriate level, but even at level 36, a Choice Specs boosted Surf from Bleach wipes out his team. I wish they made Team Rocket a more formidable opponent. I guess I'm going to have to show them how it's done. They clearly don't understand the power of poison types like I do. In one of my earliest playthroughs, a commenter suggested that I start using the Universal Pokemon Randomizer in order to allow Trade Evolution Pokemon to evolve in my runs, and, well, you may have noticed that one Trade Evolution in particular, Gengar, happens to be my favorite Pokemon. So, at level 37, Ammonia evolves into my channel mascot. Gengar isn't just my favorite Pokemon, but it's also very necessary to the success of this run going forward, because from here the game ratchets up the difficulty. That starts with Clair and her Dragon types. Her sniper Kingdra can instantly one-shot anyone on the team with a poorly timed crit, so it's important to take it out quickly, which is hard to do given its typing and base stats. I think I have a pretty good plan on how to deal with her though. I'm going to need to set up some toxic spikes, but I can't afford to have Bleach take a bunch of hits from her lead Gyarados just in case I don't have the opportunity to cleanly switch him back in when I need him. Instead, I have Roundup put her Gyarados to sleep and task Bug Spray with laying the trap. Her sleepy Leviathan finally wakes up after a while, but Roundup tucks her back into bed. This allows for a safe switch into Ammonia, who I finally taught the TM for Thunderbolt after playing Voltorb Flip in the Goldenrod game corner. I wasn't sure who Clair was going to send in next, and it turned out to be her Dragonair. It's impossible to know which of the two she sent in, but my assumption is it's the one with Thunderwave, which is the only reason Ajax is here. Now I can safely switch into Bleach on what I know can't be a Thunderwave, and he's able to outspeed and take out both of her dragons with Choice Specs boosted Ice Beams. All that leaves is her Kingdra, who gets badly poisoned on its way into battle. While Bleach can take hits from her with his massive special defense, I can't risk a poorly timed crit this close to the Elite Four. Bleach is arguably the most important member of the team. Oh, hey Bug Spray? No, you're just as important as Bleach. You're definitely not here to be sacrificed if necessary. The haters will say you fell off, but I disagree. He gets hit with a smokescreen on the switch-in, and because he didn't take any damage from Gyarados or any damage on the switch-in, he's actually in a perfect position to do something really cool. A Citrus Berry brings his health back up just enough so that he can survive another Hydro Pump, and with 14 HP he can retaliate with an Endeavor. That brings Kingdra down to the red, and before Clair can save its life with a potion, the poison takes it out. Had Bug Spray ended up getting crit or been too damaged from the Gyarados, he would have been sacrificed for the greater good of this run. Because he's still alive, he's able to help take out the Kimono Girl's Umbreon, which makes things a lot easier on everyone else because that thing is a pain in the ass. Their real threat is Espeon, but because I led with Ammonia, he's able to take it out with a single Shadow Ball. The rest of their evolutions go down with ease, then they remind me why I almost always play Heart Gold over SoulSilver. Instead of staying in the same town and going to the top of Bell Tower, I instead have to teach something Whirlpool and Flash and navigate my way through the Seafoam Islands to find Lugia. After all that time and effort they spend getting down here and doing their ritual to summon them, I run away and it disappears. I don't think they appreciated that. I can't be concerned with legendary Pokemon right now because I have to navigate this arduous path to the Elite Four, filled with dangerous trainers like Ace Trainer Brian with his singular level 35 Mareep. Seriously, whose idea was this? At least evolve it into an Ampharos or something. I just fought the hardest trainers in the region and stared down a legendary bird. I think I can handle something tougher than what Ace Trainer Brian is bringing to the table. At the end of Victory Road, Butt shows up for one final spanking. We have a few levels on him and type coverage to deal with all his Pokemon, so once again he's taken care of easily. What won't be easy is the Elite Four. I let my laziness get the best of me and opt not to grind for enough coins to get a ton of TMs at the game corner, instead choosing to buy a few of their less accurate counterparts at the department store. I do get enough to get Flamethrower for Chlorine, but that's it. I'm sure their lower accuracy won't cause me any issues. It's gonna be fine. What's not going to be fine is Will's confidence after we're done with him. Ammonia has a sizable level advantage, Choice Specs, and Shadow Ball, making what should have been the most difficult opponent in the Elite Four a breeze. Second is Koga, a fellow Poison-type user. I tasked Chlorine with taking on his giant spider by literally killing it with fire. I guess Koga's moth was drawn to the light that his Ariados' smoldering corpse left behind because his Venomoth comes out next. It knows Psychic, and the only one on the team I feel comfortable having tank a Psychic is Bleach. Instead, he gets nailed with a 55% accuracy Supersonic on the switch, but breaks through confusion and nails a crit Surf to get the KO. Fortress comes in next, and while I don't think it's likely that it goes for Explosion here, you can never be too careful. I send in Ammonia, but this idiot goes for Toxic Spikes.
I'd say that does the trick. That'll do it. Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, I'd say that'll do it. Yeah, that'll help a little.
Initially, I had planned on using Chlorine for this, but I decided to stay in Thunderbolt as with the Choice Specs, it'd still do a ton of damage, and Fortress can't actually hit Ammonia with any moves. Koga, realizing this, has the brilliant idea of swapping in his Crobat on the Thunderbolt and immediately gets it killed. He sends in his Muck, who's actually annoying to deal with, but Asbestos is having none of that today and takes it down with an Earth Power. Now that Fortress is his only Pokemon left, Ammonia is free to take it out with a couple of Thunderbolts. Next up is Bruno. I want to set up some Toxic Spikes, so I lead with Asbestos to do just that. Bruno wastes a turn going for counter, letting us freely set up 2 layers. He goes for a dig that Chlorine evades thanks to his levitate ability. I needed to do some chip damage to it because Weed Killer won't one-shot it with Fly thanks in part to his minus attack nature. He ends up getting crit with a quick attack, which seems harmless enough in the moment. He sends in his pile of rocks, who sets up a sandstorm but gets blasted by a surf from Bleach for the KO. This baits in Hitmonchan as it knows Thunder Punch, so I safely pivot into Asbestos, who also doesn't take sandstorm damage thanks to her ground typing. Because it knows Ice Punch, another switch is in order, and Chlorine and his massive defense stat handle it well. A few Fire Punches activate his Citrus Berry, and the combination of sludges and poison damage take out the Hitmonchan. Weed Killer gets hit with a Swagger on his way in, so I'm forced to swap into Bleach. I don't actually want to knock it out here because then Bruno will still have a full restore available for his Machamp, so a Poison Jab perfectly brings it into heal range as it goes for a Swagger. On the heal turn, I get a clean switch into Weed Killer, who can KO with a Fly. His Machamp comes in and gets poisoned, and here is where I make a terrible mistake. Because of that crit earlier, Weed Killer has absolutely no chance of surviving 2 Rock Slides, even with a held Charty Berry weakening the first one. Because Fly is a 2-turn move and Machamp has no guard, he's going to hit twice in a row if it doesn't get the KO with Fly, which it doesn't. That was a terrible mistake. Asbestos completely walls his Machamp and could have easily handled it from here, but instead I let my overconfidence get the best of my decision making, and it cost Weed Killer his life. If he didn't have a minus attack nature, he would have gotten the KO, but even still, there were damage rolls that could have gotten the range. But in my head, all I really thought about was, well, I'm holding a Charty Berry, so I'll be fine. A very silly mistake that was entirely avoidable. That one will have a ripple effect throughout the rest of this playthrough. One mistake can snowball quickly into an avalanche of pain. Machamp ends up in heal range, but Ammonia gets to nail 2 risk-free Psychics for the KO. We've defeated Bruno, but at what cost? We don't have time to mourn the loss of our fallen friend for very long. Karen is the last of the Elite Four, and she loves to spam double teams with her Umbreon. Mothball's Signal Beam is a 2-hit KO, but he misses the second one thanks to the aforementioned double team. A held Lumberry ensures that he remains clear-minded and focused on his primary goal, which is being the only Pokemon on the team that can actually deal with this Umbreon. That is, assuming he actually hits another Signal Beam. Eventually he does, and Murkrow comes in, so Chlorine safely comes in on the Pluck, which steals his Lumberry, which was an oversight by me when planning this battle, but ultimately not a big deal. A Flamethrower starts to roast her bird, but before I could finish cooking it, she swaps into Houndoom, whose Flash Fire ability activates. Well played, Karen. Maybe you should teach Koga how to properly switch in his Pokemon. He needs some help. She may have made a nice switch, but 2 can play at this game. Bleach does end up getting burned, but he still accomplishes his goal and knocks it out with a Surf. Her half-health Murkrow reappears, and Bleach is able to chain KO with another Surf. 2 birds, 1 stone. Or 2 birds... Well, no. One bird and 1 dog and 2 Surfs. I don't know. Anyways, they're both dead at the hands, or tentacles, of Bleach. This brings in Vileplume, who would be easily walled by a Crobat. Instead, Mothball is back to handle the situation. He gets a low roll and a second side beam, but the self-induced confusion from its petal dances finishes the job for us. Her last Pokemon is Gengar, and unlike our much cooler, much more handsome Gengar, hers doesn't know many very good moves. I can safely switch into my own, although that might be the most damage Lick has ever done to any Pokemon ever. Ammonia establishes dominance by taking it down with a Shadow Ball, and now all that stands in the way is Lance. Remember when I mentioned the snowball effect of losing 1 Pokemon earlier? We've arrived at that moment. His Gyarados is obviously no problem for Ammonia, who can outspeed and get the KO with a Thunderbolt, but his Aerodactyl is a big problem. Weed Killer is the only one that could have outsped this thing on its own. Ammonia is holding a Choice Scarf, so he can outspeed, but he won't do enough damage to get the KO, and he can't take a crunch. Chlorine can, so it's his time to shine. A crit from Rock Slide brings him down to just 22 HP before his Citrus Berry, but that's okay because all he needs to do is get in some damage with Thunder. I'm sure their lower accuracy won't cause me any issues. It's gonna be fine. Well, that's unfortunate. That's what I get for not taking the time to get more Thunderbolt TMs. At least his Citrus Berry gives him enough HP where he could get another shot at it. The situation has gone from unfortunate to tragic. Well, at least I have a solid backup plan. Asbestos knows the move Blizzard, and she's a pretty tanky lady, so all she has to do is connect with 1. That's okay, sweetie, you'll get him next time. Okay, 2 in a row, but, it's fine, just, no worries, shake it off. 3rd time's the charm, right? Just to be clear, the odds of missing 3 blizzards in a row are about a 2.7% chance. If you combine that with the 2 rock slide crits in a row, the odds become 1 in 9,481. Meaning that if I played that exact sequence of 5 moves 10,000 times, you'd expect it to happen roughly once. All I needed to do was some chip damage to this thing with chlorine, and Ammonia could have gotten the KO, and I intended on sacrificing Weed Killer here to do it. Instead, now Asbestos is going to have to pay the price, if she even lives. An Aerial Ace comes in, and she hangs on with 6 HP and gets off a Body Slam, which sadly doesn't paralyze. I want to save her life, but because she's so low it could go for a random move, and I scout out the next move with Protect and it would in fact be a crunch. There's no safe switch here. Her time is up. Her sacrifice was not in vain, as that little bit of damage gives Thunderbolt the range to KO. Thankfully Lance cooperates here and sends in his Charizard next. A Thunderbolt does a ton of damage and his Shadow Claw thankfully doesn't crit. Man, it's a good thing Charizard has a mediocre attack stat. Ammonia takes out the Imposter Dragon and he sends in the real thing next, his level 50 Dragonite. If Bleach gets crit on the switch, it's over. I can't afford to not have Gengar for Kanto, as it's the only one that gives me a chance against Sabrina. I look over at Little Mothball and his wide-eyed stare tells me he knows what's about to happen. I send him in and he goes down to an outrage. It's officially a bloodbath. His sacrifice lets me get a clean switch into Bleach, who outspeeds his rampaging beast and sweeps through his dragons with Choice Specs boosted Ice Beams to earn us the victory. While a lot of valuable team members were lost, we do still have just enough Pokemon to get a full team of 6 back together for the second half of this run. Thankfully, the most important 2 team members remained alive, as Bleach and Ammonia are a deadly duo that helped me easily carve my way through Kanto. They help carry us all the way to the final gym, the only one that actually requires a bit of thought. His Exeggutor knows Trick Room, so I have to have Ammonia take it out before he has a chance to set that up. This brings in his Arcanine, and I really don't have a better option than to risk Bleach to a crit Flare Blitz. Thankfully he doesn't get crit, but if he did, an Extreme Speed might have finished the job before he could retaliate with a Surf, which does just enough to get the KO thanks to the recoil damage from Flare Blitz. Blue then makes things easier by sending in his Rhydon. Machamp also knows Earthquake, so he could have sent them out in the opposite order and made things more difficult. Instead, Roundup is able to tank the hits and get off a Sleep Powder. There's always the chance for a first turn Wake Up that turns this into a disaster scenario, but thankfully Ammonia is able to come in and safely get a KO with Psychic. This brings in Gyarados, and I'm locked into Psychic, so I have to switch. Pesticide comes in, and Gyarados starts going for Dragon Dances, which would be genuinely terrifying if not for the fact that Pesticide still outspeeds and does a ton of damage with Leaf Blade. A second Dragon Dance doesn't manage to give him the speed advantage and he goes down to another Leaf Blade. His last Pokemon is Pidgeot, which pumps a weak Air Slash into our new teammate Drano the Muck. I Protect Stall to make sure a return is coming instead of an Air Slash, and it is, so I can safely bring in Ammonia to finish the job and earn us our 16th badge of the run. With that, there's only one thing standing in our way. At the top of Mount Silver, Red is standing in the snow all alone. Real serial killer vibes, honestly. I don't think he's okay mentally. I decided to level up to 84 instead of matching his Pikachu because I found that being at level 88 makes the rest of his team a bit more manageable, as you'll see in some other runs that I've already completed of this game, should you choose to subscribe and watch more of my content. I have a bit of a silly strategy here, but if my plan fails, I do have a backup that is pretty reliable. Instead of having Ajax take out Pikachu with an Earthquake, I have him set up a Sandstorm to get rid of the hail that would be permanent otherwise. Technically, Pikachu could have gotten a crit high roll with Iron Tail and done exactly enough to KO Ajax, but he didn't. Ammonia could have one-shot it with Shadow Ball if necessary, so it wouldn't have been too big of an issue if he did. Other than the tragic loss of our beloved Ajax, of course. Obviously. His Lapras comes in and goes for a Blizzard that Bleach easily tanks. He's able to set up one layer of Toxic Spikes, but because Lapras knows Psychic, I can't set up a second one. In spite of the fact that it's super effective, Drano has insane special defense and leftovers. Now that he switched to Body Slam, it's safe to bring in Ammonia and get the KO with Thunderbolt, which wouldn't have gotten the range without the Sandstorm damage. This brings in his Snorlax, who the Toxic Spikes were placed for. If he had sent in his Venusaur, it would have cleared them, so it was imperative that this is the order that he brought his Pokemon in. I need Roundup to be in range for a Giga Impact, and he's currently not. So I heal back to full, then use what should probably be the first ever use of a Drain Punch on a Vileplume in the history of Pokemon. The first Blizzard missing was fortunate, but I actually did need him to connect with at least one because now Roundup is in range to be knocked out by Giga Impact. Because he outspeeds, he's able to Drain Punch again and heal up just enough to survive with 5 HP before his berry heals him. This means that Snorlax must recharge, so he can't use a full restore to save its life. Snorlax was by far the hardest Pokemon to plan around here. I could have swapped Roundup out, but I wanted Charizard to come in next, so sadly his time has come to an end. Thank you for your service, my delicate flower. This allows for a clean switch into Bleach, who just misses a KO with Surf, but Charizard decides to kamikaze itself with a Flare Blitz. From here, I actually could have saved Bleach's life, but with all of the horrors he's seen, I knew he would be happier if he could finally be at rest. There was also a chance he could survive a Giga Drain or freeze with Ice Beam, so he did have a fighting chance. Had he crit, Venusaur would have also taken itself out thanks to his Liquid Ooze ability. Alas, one of our MVPs can finally be at peace. Thank you for everything, Bleach. We wouldn't have made it here without you. Our other MVP, Ammonia, comes in and avenges his fallen friend, and all that remains is his Blastoise. This thing has absolutely no chance against Drano, unless he gets frozen. Thanks to his insane special defense and leftovers, he's able to survive 3 blizzards and finally thaws out. Now that his Blastoise is out of Blizzard PP, I could safely bring in Pesticide to finish off the battle with a Leaf Blade, earning us the victory over Red and completing the challenge. That was a lot of fun. I think this team of Poison types showed my childhood self that they're a lot more useful than I used to give them credit for. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, comment, you know the drill. Thanks for watching, and I'll smell you later.